Good evening, everyone. Lovely to have so many of you on the call. I am Ed Biden. I'm one of the co-founders of Hustle Badger, and I'm delighted we've got Sim with us here today to talk about Claude Code. Before I hand over to him, a little bit about Hustle Badger. We give people training and support on a whole range of product management and increasingly AI skills. And we've got courses, wikis, templates for AI prototyping, for building AI products with evals, for creating agents. And Sim has actually been part of our community for like many years, right since the beginning. And he helped us build out our agent courses as well. And he's one of those people that is like a go-to person for me when I'm trying to get my head around something sort of new in the AI space, which given that I kind of teach literally hundreds of people how to use AI, like, Sin is the person that the AI trainers go to for their advice. So yeah, really delighted to have him on the call when he's not, well, also when he is playing around with Claude Code. Um, he's a PM himself, but I'll let you do a kind of a longer intro, Sim, about what you're up to and what you can do with Claude Code. Over to you.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for the intro. Yeah, great to meet everyone. And I'm going to just jump straight in because we haven't got that much time. I've got a lot I want to cover. So yeah, when I was going through and making this webinar, it felt like there was a new Claude release every 5 minutes, and I had to keep updating it. But as a result, I've tried to keep it a little bit fresher. What I'm going to aim for is really giving you the principles and understanding that you can then go and tackle any update that comes through. So it won't be everything you can do possibly with Claude Code, but it's the baseline fundamentals. Also, pre-warning that I use a lot of memes just to convey stories, and so you'll be seeing more of these in today's presentation. So when I was playing around with these different tools, good to see that some of them were included, like anti-gravity cursor. I found that I had to have like a different subscription for each different tool, and it became so much to handle. But I was thinking, oh, surely there's a better way to do this, and there's one tool that you can use for general querying for your day-to-day life, but then also to build things with, and that tool is Claude Code. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm Sim, senior PM, current PM at Punter Health, but I used to have my own startup beforehand. I specialize in 0 to 1, and I like to build things on the weekend. More importantly, though, I use Claude Code all the time for my PM work. One of my team members that I can see, BB, is on the call, and she can attest to my feature level commitment to Claude Code. Um, but yeah, just also to mention that I'm not actually affiliated with Anthropic in any way. Just a big fan of what they're doing. But in terms of what I use it for, we're a small startup that I work in, so every person has to wear many hats. But what I use a lot of Code for is to write a bunch of things. So automated newsletters, Quant applications, regulatory documentation, dynamic PRDs straight from the code base, and it saved me tons of time. And hopefully, I'll be able to show you how to save yourself just as much time. And then I also build things with it, as I mentioned, so I can build prototypes for discovery. I can build some SaaS tools for myself, and all of that is just with one tool, so which is really great. In order to help me do this with just myself, I have sub-agents within Claude that all have different personas. So it's a little army of, I don't know, Claudeites. I don't know what the mini version of Claude would be. Claudeitos. The mini army of Claudeitos who can help me out whenever I need for specific things. And yeah, again, I'll show you exactly how you build these yourselves. I had this slide in just to kind of see really top level feedback on what your familiarity is with Claude Code, just because so I can kind of cater how I frame things. Cool, good to see. Most people have never used it before. Some have used it regularly. Cool, thanks for the engagement on that one. I appreciate it. So yeah, I've got a bit for everyone in here. I'll go through the fundamentals, but every now and then I'll throw in some tips and tricks that should hopefully make it useful for if you already have been using it for a while. I've also got this slide because sometimes it's like not many people have their cameras on, and I'm very visual to see if things are connecting or not. I appreciate though that you may not be in a position where you can turn your camera on, but if you are, it'd be great to see your face. Cool. So what we'll go through and cover off today is what is Claude Code, how can we get started, and then we go into the next evolutions. How do we master context for all things documentation? How do we go through and create the commands, subagents, and prototyping to really take us through to the next level? So starting with Claude Code. So if I were to look at regular Claude or ChatGPT or any one of these other LLMs, you kind of have this case where there's siloed documentation, where you might have a project where you have maybe all of your PRDs and another project where you have your newsletters in, and you have to go through and dip in between them, and they can only be used as context for Claude, but Claude can't create them directly for you within that. However, on Claude Code side, you are able to have everything as context. You don't need to pick and create these special projects. You can just say, here's everything, you have access to everything. And then Claude can then not only read it, but also write it directly. So rather than saying, here's a massive Word doc, please can you update it and send me a fresh version with the changes, you just say, oh, can you go and do the changes yourself, which is a massive time saver, one of the best things about it, in my opinion. One of the caveats that we will go into how to address later on is that Claude Code is stored locally. So in the same way you have your like downloads and documents folder on your laptop or computer, and that's where the Claude or Claude Code will live. Another big benefit of Claude Code is its ability for parallel task execution. So regular Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, you say you want to do like a user interview synthesis, you might do it for participant number one, then copy paste the prompt, do it for number two, copy paste the prompt, do it for number three. But with Claude Code, you can just say, look at all three of those interviews and run it in parallel all at once, which saves you a ton of time. And lastly as well, you can use agents, as I mentioned, rather than having to go through this sequential approach, you can
Is
say,
er weer
okay, I
snoep aan
want
het
me
eten? Dat is van het
ooh,
zwemmen.
a little bit of, I think,
Ze wordt echt te dik. Echt te dik. Maar
and yeah, so in terms of then you have the different agents, or you can delegate tasks to the agents, and each one of those has their own context window. So you're not sucking up the context of Mega Claude, you're telling Baby Claude, go and do this for me. So yeah, product managers have to be really good at delegating, and this is good practice for doing just that. Cool. Moving on to the next one. This is one of the prerequisites for Claude Code. So unfortunately, you do need to pay. It's only £15 a month. It's not the most expensive subscription out there, and in my opinion, it is super worth it. But if you are thinking about using Claude Code, you need to pay for it. But hopefully, by the end of this presentation, I would have convinced you to do just that. In terms of options for getting access to Claude Code, there's a few different approaches you can do. So if you're thinking about in terms of ease of setup and the power of what you can do with that tool, it starts off in the top left with web-based tools. So you just go on your browser, you can get access to it. There's also then desktop, which you download natively to your computer. VS Code, which is my favorite one, and I'll explain why. And then versus the terminal interface, which is what it was initially made for, but in my opinion, it's not quite as intuitive as VS Code. So most of the screenshots that I will use for my examples will be from VS Code. And as I mentioned, Claude Loves, or Anthropic rather, have been doing a lot of updates, and the Claude Cowork has just come in from left field, which you uh, uh, need the max plan, which is a lot more expensive than 15 quid. I myself don't even have the max plan. I still just pay for Pro because it gives me a lot of what I need. And so I can't quite comment myself on where this sits, but when it gets put out for more wide distribution, I should hopefully have a view. But that, in my opinion, from what I've seen online, it looks like it's made for this kind of desktop-y area in terms of yeah, ability. But yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely going to be the future, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it. Straight into what these options look like then. So in terms of the web, I'll lead this with saying that I don't think this is great to start off with because it's more catered towards engineers, and I myself am not technical. I've just said that in my bio section, but my background's in science, not in engineering, so I don't actually know how to code. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend starting off in the web version of Claude Code. It needs GitHub access and can't access local folders at the moment, and so it isn't the best. You would get to it by clicking on this code button on your left bar within the web version. And as I mentioned, yeah, the pros is exactly where you're already using Claude. You can get clear session history, but there's limited scope and you need to really use GitHub for it. Moving on to desktop, so going slightly down that chain. Similar UI, but you are able to access local, which is useful. You can get access to the folders that are saved on your computer, and I only use it really for quick one-off queries and standalone tasks because it hasn't got the same power in terms of manual file editing / commands and those sorts of things. But just a quick note that co-work will probably improve that. So yeah, ask me again in a few weeks' time, and then maybe desktop will be the best way to use Claude Code. And then you've got VS Code. So in my opinion, this is the best of both worlds. It gives you the ability to use Claude Code in a side panel, which I'll explain more in detail, and also in the terminal, you can edit it within the code editor, and you can also navigate it within the sidebar. It makes me feel a bit like an engineer, even though I'm not one as well, which is always a bonus. In terms of the other pros, so yeah, you can navigate it really easily. You get a lot of power from the slash commands and the agents. It's really easy to have different tabs open and session history, which is always really useful. It is slightly more complex to get started with, but hopefully by the end of today, I'll kind of show you how to use it if you haven't been familiar with it already. And it's also not synced with the online chats. And then the last one is Warp. It doesn't normally look like this, but this is the custom kind of background that I've put on my one. And this is really a terminal that is like it's software that you can get for free. There is a paid version, but you don't need the paid version for what I'm showing you today. And it gives you the terminal interface that you can speak with Claude, but you can also go through and look at the files you have and the read sorry the diffs whenever changes are made, you can see them here, and you can also edit it with code in the code view as well by itself. So yeah, kind of going through those different pros. The thing that I use Warp for the most, which is like the coding based things, because it's really great for being able to install dependencies. It has a nice original interface for planning mode, but the biggest caveat is that there's no session history, or at least I haven't figured out how to get it set up. So it's not great for when you need to come back to something. You have to have lots of tabs open to be able to do it. Benefit I like the most though is that it really makes me feel like an engineer because you're in the terminal and it's great, and yeah, so that's a big one for me. Which ones should you use? In my opinion, depends on what you're trying to get out of Claude Code. God, if I had a plan for every time I said Claude Code this webinar, I could be a rich man. The first one is documentation, and I assume co-work will come and take up this use case. So I'm not going to focus on that too much. The next is VS Code, which allows you to do the documentation, but also the sub-agents and commands, and then the prototyping and writing code itself. And then there's Warp, which in my opinion is better optimized for these two use cases on the right. If you do want to look a bit more into co-work, Claire Vaux did quite a nice breakdown that I read the other day that I'd recommend checking out just to, if you're curious to see what that would look like. Cool, so moving on to how to get started. The prerequisites for getting started with Claude, as I mentioned, is Claude Pro, but you also need to download node.js because Claude Code is essentially an app and node.js is needed to run it. You can get this either from their website or from Warp. I really, really recommend downloading Warp and using this because it will be so useful. Because as you go through, you might get tripped up on other things, and Warp can help you install dependencies. It's more intuitive than a regular terminal. You can like click around, you can open for folders. It's a way easier way to get started. Again, I'm not affiliated with Warp either, just a big fan. You can get it from their website. And once you've got it, all you need to do is type in please install node.js and it will go into its magic and install that for you. It might ask for a few permissions, but you can get that done within there. And then you can go into the terminal once that's been installed and then download the bit of code that you need to install Claude Code. It's different for Mac and Windows, so depending on which one you want to do, you can have a look at that. Oh, too soon. I'm just going to also pull open and get the link for you, put it in the chat, just in case you want to have a look at that in the background as well. But yeah, have a look at those and then just paste it into Warp as it is, and that will then download Claude for you. You'll see a bunch of stuff happening on the screen, but that's just it installing. Once it's installed, you can just double check this done properly with this little prompt here. Cool. And then that's pretty much it. You've installed Claude Code. You're ready to go. All you really need to do is just call Claude. Um, and to do that, you just type in your terminal, either in Warp or in VS Code, Claude. It will then maybe ask for permissions to get access to that folder, and then boom, you're in. And honestly, for me, like when I type in Claude, this is how it feels like. It's like I'm summoning a mythical beast because that's so powerful. And it's yeah, it's really great because you just jump in, it changes the UI, and then you're good to go. So you might think, okay, cool, like that's great, I'm ready to go. Thanks for the webinar, Sim. I'm off, but not quite yet. There's a few things we need to consider first, and that is it matters where you are, where you when you call Claude, because that will be where you place your claude.md file, which is the instructions guide for Claude. So if you think about like your average folder hierarchy, depending on if you're in the account and organization folder, for example, if you call Claude here and set up the folder there, it will only be for the nested folders within that. But if you do it in the root directory, then it'll be for all of those. And when you're getting started, I recommend doing it there. But the kind of mental model that I see it really is of a house. If you imagine your computer folders as a house, and at the top you have like the root level. So if you call Claude at the documents or user level, it can include all the different rooms, everything within it. You can then Claude can get access to those, which is where I'd recommend getting started out. It's great for like universal instructions, like I want to have everything in British English, for example, and you can put that at the root level when you call Claude. You don't have the project level, so this might be if you're working on a specific side project, you can then call Claude within there and set up a Claude.md file that can give it specific guidance to what's going on in that project. And then even at like a more direct level within the folders as well, you can give specific instructions. And that's kind of also quite useful for restricting the context that Claude needs to read every time it's being called. As I said, the root one's best for getting started. I recommend doing it there. Project is good if you want to separate out the work streams and have consistency, but if you want to look at reducing the context size or applying special restrictions or instructions, I recommend doing it at the folder level last, but I do this first, then this, then this. And the reason for that is because this will make a bit more sense later on in the webinar, but when you're calling your agents or calling your commands, it's based on where that particular Claude file is at the moment. So if you're up here in this room and you call Claude, but the file was marked, was created in this particular folder here, you won't be able to get access to it. So bear that in mind when you're creating your folder. To set up this file, the Claude.md file, you need to just navigate to the folder you want. Again, root one recommended. Summon Claude like it's a mythical being, and then type / in it, which is great as a British person because it's slang in the UK as well. So I always say that, say that when I'm doing it. But yeah, so you can type in it, and this takes us to our first top tip that I've got, and that is when you're creating this file using init, give Claude context about what is in the folder and what you're going to use it for. Because if you just do init by itself, it will default to coding use cases, and that might not be the most useful one for you. So in this example here, I'd just say, oh, maybe it's a folder dedicated to creating email newsletters. So please consider this when creating the file. You can then use like a Russian doll style. You can have a bigger one at the top, and as you go down that folder hierarchy, you can say, okay, now I'm in a folder that is nested in it. Please bear this in mind, don't duplicate things. And Claude will have that context of what is around it to know to build the best .md file for you. But how do we get in VS Code to the particular folder that we want to navigate to? And the same with Warp. I'm going to go through kind of how to do this. So hopefully it's not too entry level, but in my opinion, it's really useful because when I first downloaded VS Code, I had no idea what I was doing. So I'm just going to go through top level how to navigate both Warp and VS Code. So within Warp, this is what you see when you first open it. It looks like the terminal, but down here you have this nice UI where you can navigate based. If you click on that icon, it will open up and it'll show you where you're based in the folder directory. If you click this button on the left panel here, you can then open the left side so you get a better map as to where you are, so you know if you're in the right place when you want to call Claude. I should have done a meme for Better Call Claude instead of Better Call Saul. Damn, opportunity lost. Then if you're looking at VS Code, first you're going to do is install it online, or you can even ask Warp to install it for you. Like, honestly, Warp is so good. I really recommend it. And then once you've downloaded it, all you need to do is click Open Folder and navigate to the folder that you want to start your project in. You'll then be able to see on the left the kind of folders within that. Sorry, Ed, go for it.
Yeah, sorry, just to jump in here, Sim, because we had I was interested. We also had someone else asking, when you talk about VS Code, could you substitute in cursor or anti-gravity here, like a different IDE, or is this specific to VS Code?
So my approach with how I use Claude Code for documentation is specific to VS Code because, in my opinion, it's the best for editing the context. I have tried with anti-gravity, but anti-gravity tries to it tries to get you to use their own models to use Gemini. It does work, and it's honestly when I prototype my side projects, like I use anti-gravity and it's really good for that. But specifically for like my more product manager use cases, I do recommend VS Code. But please have a go. Let me know it's better. Like I'm always learning with these things, so keen to hear your thoughts. But yeah, so with that in mind, one thing that VS Code does give you that I don't know if you get through Cursor or anti-gravity, I'm not sure, but that's the extensions. Because what you can do is you then install the Claude Code for VS Code extension, make sure it's the one from Anthropic, and that'd be really helpful for getting started because you can just natural language ask it to do stuff without having to initialize. So you just once you've installed it, you'll see the option for it on the right hand side. You do have the terminal option at the bottom as well, which you can get to if you click the button there, and that will open up like this. The first option on the right is the sidebar, which is more similar to the classic Claude experience and kind of my preferred one for quick ones. You can see your past conversations, you can open up new chats, really easy to navigate. And then the more powerful option at the bottom is terminal, which is what I use only to do slash commands that are more powerful. Because yeah, you can't do all slash commands in the sidebar, but I'll explain why in a little moment. You might be thinking, okay, great, there's two options. I've just given you more things to decide what to do. But in my opinion, I'd say start with the sidebar, treat it like it's a regular Claude instance. You can ask it like regular questions. You can have a chat with it. It doesn't have to turn into Claude Code mode. So it's really great for planning because you can see it really nicely. And then when you want to go into kind of building things, then look at the terminal. But if you are keen for the terminal, honestly, just use Warp, in my opinion. Like way cleaner UI, way easier to use than the VS Code terminal. And yeah, if you want to open up several conversations, you can just do it in the plus. So yeah, now we found our folder we want to do it in, we've used VS Code to get there. For the sidebar, we don't need to summon Claude because it's already there, just chilling on its side. But then you do need to initialize it, so make sure to add context when you use that slash command. It's also worth mentioning if I go back, if you click on this slash icon here, you can also choose slash commands just by clicking on it rather than having to type it in. But I recommend getting used to type it in because we're trying to feel like engineers and that's how they would do it. That brings me to top tip number two, and that is when you are navigating stuff, you might be thinking, okay, where's my .claude folder? And it's hidden. The bastards, they hide it from you by default. And the reason, well, there's various reasons for that, but to reveal it, there's different approaches depending on if you're Windows or on a Mac. On the Mac, you go open up Finder, do Command Shift plus, oh sorry, Command Shift full stop, and that will show the hidden folders. So then you can get to it in VS Code. If you're in a Windows, just click View and then click Hidden Items to show those, and then you'll be able to see where that is in VS Code, and that's really important for when you get to the point of making commands and subagents because they're within that folder. Ooh, what's a breath? I appreciate I'm flying through this, but I've got a lot to get through. So in terms of how we then navigate Claude Code. So now we've gotten past the kind of activation point, and now we want to start doing things. There is that text box that I showed, but there's different ways that you can configure it. It starts off in this mode, which is ask before edits. So it will essentially what it will do is when you say, can you write this document, it will start writing it, but then ask you before it commits anything. So it'll double check in with you. Then if you want to switch between this and the next mode, all you do is click Shift and Tab. You click on that and it goes to edit automatically. So, and that will just go straight in. So for example, if you had a document, you would say, convert this from British English to American English. If you had it in ask before edits, it would stop you at every S to Z, like at every little change. But if you just put it in edit automatically, it will just go through the whole thing and do it for you. So when you have high confidence, you can just use that one. And then there's plan mode, which is honestly one of the best features of Claude Code, in my opinion. Really great for thinking through what you need to do. It will create a plan for you that you can review and tweak if you want to. It will ask you clarifying questions and really help you improve the prompt. And all you need to do to get to there is just Shift Tab twice, and you're off. There is also thinking mode. You can either use the slash command or click on the slash icon to get there. And I recommend getting good at toggling this on and off because one thing Claude Code does is it absolutely eats tokens. And so if you don't need that thinking capability, I would recommend turning it off and then turning it back on when you do need it. It's the same with the model. If you're doing a really easy task, don't use the super powerful model, switch it to make sure you're conserving that all important context and tokens. And the last one is when you are kind of going through, you might be asked for permissions on certain things. Just have a read through what it's asking you to do as a baseline. And I recommend just saying yes and not saying always allow access because you kind of want Claude Code to earn your trust in a particular folder and make sure it's not going to be doing the wrong things. So to do so, just click yes on that one. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's hungry. It eats up to tokens. I never really hit my usage limits until I started using Claude Code for my kind of daily work, and it really does eat it up tokens if you don't use it properly. You can type usage like / usage to see where you're at with it, but I recommend being intentional with planning mode with the Opus models and also the Claude.md files because if you remember, we have those different ones at the different levels in the house. But if they're really, really like lots of context in those MD files, Claude will have to read through that every single time you do a query because those are its global instructions. So make sure those MD files are super lean and only the stuff you really need it to bear in mind each time. Yeah, it's kind of as Uncle Ben famously said, with great power comes great token use, and Claude Code is really, really powerful. You've just got to make sure it doesn't use up all your context immediately. Another top tip, when you're using it, you can say you've like written something, maybe there was a typo and you cancelled it. If you just click up on the keypad, it will pull whatever was in that last chat into the text or chat box. Yeah, super simple, but that saved me a bunch of time before, so sticking it in. The next one is there's kind of two nice ways that you can direct the attention of Claude to the file or folder that you want. And this is really important for conserving context. The first is to just use app in the chat, and the next is to in that like folder tree within VS Code, you can right click and then click copy path and then paste that into the chat, and that will show Claude, okay, this is where it is. Because if you say, oh, can you go and get me this document without saying where it is, it will burn a bunch of tokens just to go and search through everything to find it. So yeah, get used to calling these. It knows where you want to work. And the last tip on this one is to use the hash symbol because you can put in temporary rules for that session. So say if you're working on something, rather than having to go and update your Claude MD file for that particular session and work through and then go back and change it, you can just say hash, here's a rule for the session, and then it will remember that for all of those sessions without having to update it. It's a good way to test rules before you update that file. Another pause for breath because I feel like I'm beatboxing. Okay, let's go. So the next one is mastering context. Um, and this is like really where a lot of the power comes from Claude. It has all the context that it needs all the time. You have, as I said, you have different folders that can access them whenever you want. No more having to copy paste between projects. Everything gets updated automatically. So say you wanted to draft a PRD, so product requirements document based on the meeting notes. You might say, okay, Claude, please do this for me. And what it will do, it will go and read this folder, get the backlog refinement meeting notes, or then read this folder, get the competitor analysis. It'll go through and look at the roadmap planning. It'll then go through here and then look at the baseline metrics. And then it will then create the document and then put it back into the product strategy. So without you having to lift a finger, it's kind of search through all of these things. So really good at finding that context. A tip for doing this well is to structure these folders logically. It's the same way if you have someone who's just been onboarded to your team and you say, go and find the PRD, would they be able to get to it by the names of the folders? If the answer is no, then neither will Claude without burning a bunch of tokens to make that as easy as possible. Good question, Jamie. That's a sneak preview. I'll get to that in a bit later on in this session in terms of how to get to local storage. I would recommend looking at creating an index. So ask Claude to say, can you index where the folders are? If it's a bit too complicated, then that will help out as well. So now we're cooking with Claude, but there's one thing we need to be careful of, and that is that one of the limitations of Claude Code is that the file types that it can read and write directly are only these 6 that you see on screen. Hopefully they'll improve that, and I think with Claude Cowork they definitely will, because that means more into like a Google Drive integration play, in my opinion. But yeah, so imagine like, so your markdown files could be your PRDs, your documentation, your PDFs can be your reports, websites, text can be raw notes, CSV can be analytics, images can be screenshots, can be mockups, and then the JSONs can be the structured data. But it's tough. And it's probably one of the things that takes me the most time is converting files into format that I need, but I have commands and agents that do that for me, so it's not too bad. In terms of the markdown, yeah, you can edit the file directly in VS Code. You can just go through, double click on it, edit it, but just make sure to save because it doesn't auto save. Been burnt by that before. So yeah, simple one, but it's useful for that. In terms of using Markdown with Google Docs, Google released a nice feature recently where if you're working in a Google Doc, you can just highlight the text, right click on it, and you'll see copy as Markdown. You click that and paste it into your VS Code or wherever, and it will paste it in Markdown. If you're then in VS Code, you want to put it back into a Google Doc, you just copy it here, come back to the Google Doc, right click, paste from Markdown, and it'll paste it as a beautiful Google Doc. I have seen that. I think they're playing with a native version of this where it would just assume that you're in Markdown or coming from Markdown. You won't need to double click, but I think they're beta testing it because it's not consistent for me yet. So here's a fallback option just in case. Do I provide a template for each style of documents to edit or write? In terms of templates, it's a very good approach for saving context and making things consistent. So I would definitely recommend you can have a folder called templates. You can have an index within that folder that says which template to use when, and then Claude Code will know how to go and use that. So yeah, for sure. In terms of getting from to Markdown from Word docs, it takes a bit longer. So you can read the file using a tool, and then Claude Code will then convert that to Markdown for editing. Because you try and open it directly, it will just say it's not possible. So yeah, in kind of summary, if you want to go from docx, so a Word doc, to you can do it to Markdown. PDF, it can be read as by Claude, but can't be written by Claude. And Excel, I recommend converting to CSV for creating editable context. The next one, and this is the one that kind of Jamie alluded to, is the ability to do it within local storage. I'm not sure about Notion, but in my opinion, there's a few different ways to be able to get your documents into the cloud so Claude can work with them. The first is GitHub, so more engineering heavy, but I'm going to just skip through that because I don't really use that one. The next one is Google Drive, and the other one is Obsidian, which you may have heard about as well. You can, of course, just copy context content across from VS Code to your documents, but it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. So here's some ways to have it synced by itself. So Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, like any of these tools that let you sync your local files with the cloud, you can also be sneaky and stick a Claude MD file within there and use it to operate Claude Code from. So for example, I have in my laptop, I have Google Drive downloaded. I can then put my Claude in there. So whenever files are updated, it also updates on my online Google Drive under the computers tab in my Mac. Steps to do that, I'll just download Google Drive for desktop, open up a folder, navigate it from VS Code or Warp, initialize the Claude within that, and then turn on sync on the desktop app, and then it will start moving files across and keep it nice and up to date. Obsidian is a really great Markdown-based editor that you can sync on the paid plan, which is £8 a month. So I'm not trying to get anyone on this call to buy any other software other than Claude, so I won't go further on this one. But I use it a lot for personal knowledge management and also writing heavy work. There's a bunch of people who do good content about how to use Obsidian and Claude Code. I think Trisha Torres is one of them, so I recommend checking out her stuff if you're more interested in how to use this. It's an investment at the end of the day, so it might be annoying having to convert stuff into Markdown, but having it in Markdown, it's like the universal language. You can put it into any tool. You're not locked into a single platform, which is really good for testing out all these different tools that come through. So now moving on to the pièce de résistance, commands, subagents, and prototyping. In the description of this talk, I promised that I'd teach you how to do it in 5 minutes or less, but let's see if I can keep up to that promise. So in terms of slash commands, these are essentially reusable prompts and workflows. So if you imagine that you previously had like a prompt library, rather than having that prompt library, you can just have slash commands, which you can call upon whenever you want. All you need to do is you type in that // command, and then what that essentially is having all of this additional context. So like a huge prompt based just on 2 words. Really, really useful. Like this is actually one that I use, which is save article. So I'll just do this. I'll put in link from a URL from an article that I'm interested in, and then Claude will go and format that into Markdown, give me an executive summary, and put it into my Obsidian reading vault. And that's all just from 2 words. As I said, you don't need to copy paste anymore. You can just say this is the prompt. You can do the / command, and then that will then tell Claude exactly the context that it needs to be able to do it. So you can use them to call on agents, to follow protocols, to gather context, use tools, really, if the list goes on. One really important thing about / commands that tripped me up when I first started using them, because I would make them and then I could never find where the hell they were. And that is they are only visible in the level or below that you set your Claude file. So if you're in this room and you create a / command, when you're in this room, it will not work. You won't be able to find it. You have to be in that level or higher. Another really important thing to note that I didn't put on screen, but I just remembered, is when you first create a / command with Claude, it won't be usable immediately. You have to refresh or start a new chat to be able to use that / command. So it's worth bearing that in mind if you do want it in the middle of a session. To lean really deep on the house analogy, you could have like a / command to build furniture. So I might get documentation, check what tools you've already got in this room, and then call on DIY agent to go and build it. Some built-in examples of / commands that are ready to go straight off the bat. The first is /config. Do this first, as soon as you open Claude Code. And that is because you can edit your privacy settings and make sure it doesn't train on what you're telling it, which is really important if you want to have engineers still as your friends after you start using this. So I would do that first and make sure it's set, and then it's kind of set it and forget it, and you're all good. The next one is clear. So what this does is essentially just refreshes the whole chat, and that's great if you kind of finish your chain of thought and you want to just clear the chat, or maybe you made a mistake and you want to start fresh, you can just do clear. Compact compresses the context, so Claude will automatically, when you get close to its context window limit, it will compact, but you can tell it to compact on purpose, so you get control over how to do that. And the last one is rewind, which it kind of goes back to a previous step. So say you're prototyping, you got stuck in a loop, you can rewind to go back to before it messed up. You can also just hit escape twice if you're on the terminal. Some commands do only work in the terminal, which is why Warp has the highest power rating out of all the tools, and that's because it can do some of these slash commands. So if you're caught out and it's not working on Claude Code and VS Code, just use your Warp card for that particular instance or do it in the terminal view. But honestly, like the levels of Warp versus the VS Code terminal, like Warp is so much better for that, so I would recommend. Another top tip, after any slash command, you can add more context to tailor it more. So rather than having very specific slash commands for very specific use cases, you can have a more generic one, potentially like write article, and then give it more context for that specific article. For example, here with the compact one, it's really useful because you can say, I want you to compact all this context, but here's what I want you to keep. I want you to give me a prompt when you compact it that lets me start the next session effectively. That's such a cheat code because if you don't do that and Claude compacts by itself, you can lose lots of really useful context. To make your own slash commands, it is really pretty simple. You just need to ask Claude. Just say, hey, Claude, can you help me out with this? So all you need to do is go through and say, I want to create a slash command and then describe your use case. Ask clarifying questions to make it useful. Ask me clarifying questions to make it as useful as possible. Check out the existing commands, and then that's it. Doesn't take 5 minutes, it takes 5 seconds, and you have your slash commands. What I recommend doing is every time you write a long prompt and you think you might need it in the future, you can just say, I should make this a slash command so that next time I need to do that thing, I can just call the slash command. And what you can do is do it retrospectively. Say you've written a really good prompt and you're in the chat, you say, please can you make a slash command based on this conversation? And that's a nice way to go through it. Hell, you can even make a slash command that makes slash commands. It's like a super method, but it really works. Rather than having to go through and create lots of context for each time you make a slash command, just get Claude to do it for you. Honestly, so easy. Um, Here's some examples of custom slash commands that I've made in the past. So yeah, you could do one that is for competitive research, getting articles, creating PRDs. I recommend when you start off, create slash commands that help you get context into Claude so you can feed the beast really easily and then go forward and do whatever you need to do. So I would recommend starting with ones like save article, for example. Quick note on Claude skills, because I know it's a thing that's come up at some point, but I'm not going to discuss it in this webinar. And that is Claude skills is really like an expert package for Claude that has instructions, code, files, and specialized abilities, but things like creating PowerPoint slides, for example. But in my opinion, because like what happens with skills is Claude decides when to call them. But I prefer slash commands so I can control the context of when and where those skills are being used. So I'll say, create a PowerPoint using this slash command, and that slash command has the Claude skill information within it. But I'm not just saying create a PowerPoint and fingers crossed Claude will use that skill because it's not super reliable yet. So that's why I'm focusing on slash commands. Another top tip, and this is like a separate one from Claude Code, but I use it so much in Claude Code, I thought it'd be rude not to include it. And that's you can create text replacements on your computer that help you create text that you use often. So I say this sentence all the time when I'm speaking to LLMs. Feel free to ask clarifying questions if needed. So I've set up a shortcut that I just type in at clarify and it will make that whole sentence. You can use it for other stuff like LinkedIn or emails, but essentially here's a GIF of me mistyping it and then doing it right. But essentially you can see I just type in at clarify and it creates the whole sentence. That's a mega hack for the whole of your laptop life. And honestly, it saved me so much time. It is though only really usable on Mac. You have set text replacements in your settings. On Windows, you have to like do a workaround where you make it an autocorrect option that will do that. But if you're on a Mac, game changer, would recommend. I am conscious of time, so I'm going to keep speeding up a little bit, but apologies for the speed of it. But yeah, so slash commands can also call upon sub agents. You can say slash command, and then you'll get mega Claude will come back. Sub agents. So now we're into the realm of like how we use these agents. They have unique instructions. There's specialized expertise. Like maybe they're a specialist security engineer. They're reusable. You don't need to have a separate project for them. They can be used wherever you want. Just call them and they will come. And they have different permissions as well. So you can say, I only want my security agent to have the ability to push to GitHub, for example. They use their own context windows. Mega hack. You're like eating context in your main chat, send it to a sub agent. They will have their own context window, so you can preserve your context with your main chat, which is great for when you have to search through tons of stuff because that will eat up your context for really not much gain. So have a sub agent to do that bad work for you. Like having an intern. Please go do that market research for me. I don't want to spend time doing it. You can just delegate it and they would eat the context for it. They can also run in parallel. So again, saves time for similar processes, but I will note that parallel runs do eat up more content, more tokens than doing them individually. So worth bearing that in mind. They live in the .Claude folder, .Claude folder, the one that's hidden. So you can find it under agents in case you need to make any tweaks. But honestly, I recommend getting Claude to make it for you. All you need to do is say, I want to build a sub agent that does this, should do X, should not do Y, and it should ask me clarifying questions. And here is an actual example of one that I did very recently. And I'm not going to punish you and read it out word by word. I'm going to gift it to you as uh, something that you can have a look at in your own time because I am running out of time. But yeah, this is one that I use as a thought partner, which is quite useful. What's the difference between a slash command and a sub agent? So essentially, a slash command is like a prompt that you can then use to call upon different workflows, different activities. Agents is it's like saying how to describe it. It's like you have all the context of how it should be responding, what its purpose is, what files it should look for. It's I don't know. If I go back to my house analogy, an agent might be a builder that specializes in IKEA furniture, and they're really, really great at IKEA furniture. And a slash command might say might be build I don't know, put in lighting fixtures, and you can say put in lighting fixtures. You might call upon your builder agent, but you might also call upon your electrician agent. So slash commands give you the ability to call upon different ones. Um, but yeah, have a look in that prompt, and it makes it kind of gives it a bit more context as well. Here's a few examples of sub-agents that I've got. POD Vital gets used quite a bit. And yeah, it gets to the point where you want to make an agent for every single person, every little thing. But remember, with great power comes great token use. Be a bit careful with how you're using those. You might feel like at this point you've got all the tools you need to be an expert Claude marksman, but you don't want to fall short. And the reason for that is when you're prototyping, it's good to push that with Claude Code, but it can take some time. So if you're at high maturity in terms of the idea and high time available, then it's great to use Claude. But if you're not sure what you want to build or you don't have that much time, I use Lovable, if I'm being completely honest, because it is better for iterating quickly. If I don't have much time and I'm not sure, I'll just sketch it out by hand. But then when you get more comfortable with Claude Code, then you can kind of move through when you have high maturity, but it is harder to prototype with Claude Code. To get started, all you need to do is create agents that will help you preserve context, like the thought partner that I did. Have a discussion with that agent to then build out the plan, split it into tasks that it can then be executed on to preserve context. So you have different work streams and you can assign an agent to a particular work stream. If you're starting from an existing code base, what you can do is clone it from your Git repository. Claude can show you how if you're not sure. Create a separate branch to isolate the prototyping. And then within that separate branch, create a folder that you can then put your claude.md file in. Engineers. BB literally had that face as I did that. That was great. Thank you. But yeah, engineers might not be great that you're working on the code base directly, but so there are a few things that we can do for safe prototyping. The first is to isolate it. So as I said, have a separate folder. Make sure Claude knows that it should stay within that folder. Tell it that it shouldn't install dependencies without asking you. You can use hooks, which you can have a Google after, but essentially that's a way to make sure in a deterministic function that the LLM does something. So before a push to GitHub, it has to call a hook, and then you can then have something attached to that. That means check with me before you do that. I really, really recommend creating an engineer review subagent that you can call in a separate window, and then use that from a slash command subskill. I don't know why that reset. But yeah, I would recommend doing that as well. Some general tips and tricks: compact intentionally. I like really make sure you con keep your context window small for the best performance for Claude Code. You can use / usage to keep an eye on your token use, and use the hashtag / plugins feature to give Claude even more powers. This was more Claude Code 101, but if you want to get into Claude Code 201, then have a look at plugins and you'll see a bunch of stuff that it can do, like front end design, data analysis, all that good stuff. It's all built in with this plugins feature. I would make sure do ones that are by Anthropic first, because they are the safest ones. I haven't touched ones that are custom made just yet. And another things are really cool, especially if you're prototyping, and that is to change the / output style. If you type that in, you can set it to explanatory, so it will explain what it's doing and why it's writing code. And that's how I've started to understand coding a bit more, is purely by having that switched on. Still got a long way to go, don't get me wrong, but it's really a good way to learn. So yeah, the last thing, just to really remember, like if you do get caught up in this process and you're not sure, then if in doubt, just ask Claude. Like it is really a game changer. If you get stuck, you have it in that little sidebar. Where is it? You have it in VS Code. If I can find the slide within the time limit, that would be great. I had too many slides. Um, yeah, no, yeah, you have it within VS Code. It's really useful. You can then get Claude to fix any issues that you might be facing. I can't find the slide. That's embarrassing. Um, cool. There's not much time for questions. I had also had some time to do it with live demo, but I don't think we'll have that sadly. I'm happy to do that async. Um, but yeah, I appreciate it's a bit like having whiplash with all the animations and memes, but hopefully it kept you entertained. I have
Sim,
also this kind of end slide as well.
that was fantastic. Thank you so much for that tour de force on Claude, and especially the kind of very kind of practical step-by-step tips. I'm sure a bunch of people will be going through the recording in detail as they set up Claude Code. There are a few questions here, some of them from me in the chat, so maybe I can kind of roll through those if we've got a few minutes. Steve was
Let's do it.
asking, do you know how to make a Claude extension visible in Cursor?
That's a good question, and I will openly admit that I'm not the biggest user of Cursor, so I couldn't tell you. But what I'm going to do in the background is just ask my best buddy Claude to find that out for me. But yeah, I'm not aware at the moment.
Yeah, great. Um, Another question, this one from me. Yeah, voice input is like another one of those tips that people talk about a lot if you're using AI tools. Can you use voice with Claude Code, or are there any hacks there so you can kind of transcribe what you're saying directly into Warp or something like this?
Yeah, like absolutely. I personally use Whisperflow religiously for this, so I have a separate software for it, and especially when I want to customize a slash command. So I've already got my slash command set up, but I want to make it specific to the use case. I will just go in and I will just start speaking about this is my specific use case, all this kind of context. I'll end with my clarify to make it ask me clarifying questions. Um, and then yeah, and then it's good to go. But yeah, I would use it a lot for giving context because voice to text is really good for that.
Yeah, super. By the way, if anyone else has any questions, please do stick them in the chat, and we'll get around to them. Final one from me, Sin. You mentioned a few of your kind of use cases there, like writing PRDs and dragging context out of different documents. Could you talk us through maybe just like a couple of other like killer use cases where using Claude Code is just way better than say using ChatGPT or kind of like a web version of Claude.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I'll just go off ones that I've done myself just for relevancy. One of them is part of my job. I work in medtech, and we had to do a lot of regulatory documentation. And a killer use case for Claude Code for me was to get Claude to scrape several websites in parallel on the regulatory documentation guidelines, convert those into files that I can use as context in the future. And while that was happening, I had a separate tab up that I said, okay, can you go through, create like a kind of profile of all the context for my particular medical device so that it can then be used. So I created the context for that. And then I had like an interrogation system where I could then say, okay, here's the question that I need to create a policy for or a document for. I then asked Claude to then go and create those based on all the context that it itself had scraped through. Um, Another one is like with user research, for example, you can have like if you pull in your canola transcripts, your um, thematic analysis, screenshots from Figma slides or whatever, and then also information from product analytics. If you convert that into a CSV file, you can have it in a way that you can then query stuff with natural language. So you can export from your analytics platform of choice, CSV, stick it in, tie it to context from your user research and say, based on the most recent user research transcripts, what do you think has caused this sudden dip in retention that you can see in the product analytics? And then it can then go and look at all the different things and it can give you things that you can then go through and dive into. And the last example I give is understanding the code base. So I cloned an example of our app, and wasn't sure how a particular kind of feature was being used or calculated. And rather than bother BB, who's been super patient with me and really helpful, I would just ask Claude Code and say, hey, like I want to figure out what this is, but I have no idea where it is in this code base. Can you like direct me to it? And then it kind of showed me where it was. I wanted to change like a snack bar color. It showed me where that was. I could just say to BB, hey, can we change this? Here's the location, and also save her time as well. She's nodding. But yeah, there's three different ones. The difference between Claude Code and the newer Claude Cowork. Essentially, Claude Cowork is a graphical user interface that will make it easier to use the same powers that I've showed you in Claude Code. So being able to access your local documentation, being able to use commands, I assume. I haven't used it myself, but it's made, yeah, to make it as easy as possible to access where you don't need to use VS Code or the terminal. I will say, and I recommend getting used to VS Code in the terminal though, because it's a lot more powerful and gives you way more capability. Um, but yeah, have a play with Claude Code. I certainly will when I can get access to it.
I do actually have one more question. So,
Yeah,
is
go
there
for
an
it.
easy way of sharing skills, slash commands, sub agents, those sorts of things with your colleagues so you can work, together as a team on them? Or are they really kind of like personal tools that you have to like copy paste and send, as individual files to other people that want the same ones?
Yeah, great question. I can give you like a nice hacky way of doing it if that's interesting. But what I've done, and I was trying to do it for, but I don't have time for this webinar. But you can get Claude to create like an HTML that has all the different slash commands in it, host it on something, and then get that. Like that could be your way to share things. So, for example, the one that I've just put in the chat, I was like doing one weekend, and you can get Claude to build that from you can get Claude to build it from its own MD file and keep it up to date. So you can create like a website that has all your slash commands, all your agent prompts based purely on what you have. So yeah, it's maybe a bit more overkill, but like a super cool way, in my opinion, of sharing with the team.
Yeah, super. Thank you. Great. Well, look, thank you so much, Sim. As I say, that was Yeah, really fantastic. Just to get some of your kind of expertise there and share it with everyone else. So thank you for doing that. Um, Again, just as a quick reminder, I have put links in the chat. So if you want to follow Sim on LinkedIn and find him, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer a few more questions. We'll be sticking the recording of this on our YouTube channel shortly, and we will send you all just a little follow-up email with a link to that and a few other notes as well.